Thank you very much, Christine. Thank all of you for being here. Most of all, I hope to say some things that will be helpful and meaningful to every single one of you. My plan is to talk for here maybe about 40 minutes, and then I'll see what questions you might have. On behalf of Nova Southeastern University, we try to respond to any request we receive from Broward County. Our president is truly valuing community service, so however we can help you, please let us know. Now, tonight we are going to be talking about suicide prevention as well as a number of other things, and somehow I doubt that I'm the only person here that had their life affected by suicide. When I was 25, my dad died by suicide. I'm not here to talk about him, but if you lost a relative, you lost a student, you lost a close friend, I have some idea of what you've gone through. And the bottom line in our society is we just have to talk about it more and know what to look for and what to do. Now, in all honesty, it is a very challenging time to raise children. And it's a technology time. All of that time, the hours and hours are spent on screen time, for example, and we have to be very concerned. The research is saying too much screen time is connected to, unfortunately, poor mental health. Now, we're approaching the summer, and I can tell you quite honestly, schools have historically been the safest places children could possibly be. We often have tragedies over the summer. But I got a quick question. How many of you remember working like when you were in high school? I'm just curious, okay? I mean, I don't know about you, but like the day after school was out, I started a 40-hour-a-week job. Are many of the high school students currently in your community, do they have jobs? Because I think that's something that will change. So we're going to talk about what can they do, because I realize we can't manufacture jobs for all of them. We certainly want them to have relaxation and fun, but you know, the bottom line is everybody needs purpose. Everybody needs meaning. And I know recently we've all been aware of the bribery scandals to get kids into the most prestigious universities. And you know what they say happiness is all about for adults? It's about having enough money to live reasonably, and it's about having meaning. And whether or not you went to the absolute top university doesn't really matter that much in terms of happiness and meaning. Now, I did read a figure that all you needed was $50,000 for an income, and I thought, they do not live in South Florida if they think anybody can actually live adequately on $50,000, at least for a family. That is a challenge. And Parkland unfortunately got a lot of publicity last March about suicides of young people that had been connected to the school. That national focus was frankly very unfair. We don't have to look very far to find a large high school that lost a student to suicide or a recent tragedy. So it's not a Parkland problem. It is a national problem. And we must do something about it. And doing something about it really involves the entire community coming together. That would be people like the mayor, superintendent, mental health, law enforcement, parents, various community groups, and survivors. Unfortunately, teens are the most susceptible to imitating suicidal behavior. And when it happens, it suddenly becomes more viable. Because lots of teens, unfortunately, have thought about it. And I'll give you some exact data about that in just a moment. And the media often makes some pretty big mistakes. And what should the stories all be about? It should be about prevention. What to look for. How to help yourself, how to help your friend. By the way, does everybody know what happens if I push the button right now and I were to tell Siri I wanted to kill myself? Do you all know? I want to kill myself.
It sounds like talking with someone might help. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline offers free and confidential emotional support.
Shouldn't we have the discussion with every single student and child? By the way, how many of you are parents? Would you mind raising your hand? How many of you are parents of adolescents? I am so sorry. But of course, I don't really mean that. But in today's world, it's not enough to know your kids' friends. You got to know the kids' friends' parents. You got to be demanding to know exactly what's going on. I'm going to start with a simple example. Our son, and by the way, between my wife and I, we have 4 children, 17 grandchildren. Our son just had his 7th child. Would somebody please tell him to stop? So Jeremy was like 3 years old. He can still ride in the grocery cart, and I'm picking out some bananas, and I hear this little voice say, "Dad, am I the boy you always wanted?" Yes, son, absolutely you are. And one of my goals tonight is for everybody who is a parent, go home and let your sons and daughters know. Yes, they are the children you always wanted. How much you love and care about them. And it shouldn't be about what the person you think they might become someday. Show them that unconditional love for the person they are today. And I don't want to oversimplify things, but you know what I truly believe? A child who lives in a stable home, who was shown unconditional love every day, every way, they can overcome almost everything. Unfortunately, not all young people live in a stable home. And somehow I doubt that I'm the only person here that experienced a divorce. For me, that was 6 times. Just kidding. Okay? Was only once. Do you know what really helped? My ex-wife is a psychologist. We made a pact. You don't talk badly about me to our children. I will not talk badly about you. And when our children might come to me and wanted to say something negative about my ex-wife, their mom, do you think there were times I wanted to add on, maybe add to that a bit? But I never did, not a single time. You know what I always remember? She will always be their mother. She deserves my financial support and my respect until they come of age. And unfortunately, kids are often in the middle every day, every way, between separation and divorce issues. And I just think we need to remind every set of parents, you brought this child into the world together. You are parents forever in encouraging, loving, and supporting. And when we go to our son's church, my wife, my ex-wife and I usually all sit together. And every milestone, every birthday, we're always going to be sitting together. Everybody's polite, everybody's nice. Isn't that what every single kid deserves? So I was sitting here tonight, I want to know what works for suicide prevention. It's actually pretty simple. We need to reduce access to lethal means. When I read about yet another youth suicide, I think of it actually pretty simply. Untreated or undertreated mental illness, often in combination with adverse childhood experiences, all those things we don't want kids to experience. And an ugly family situation and divorce would certainly be one of those. Or living with a mentally ill family member, living with a substance abusing family member, having a lot of loss, rejection from a parent. Those are the adverse childhood experiences. Being emotionally, physically, or sexually abused would be another one. Those are the things we have to work on drastically eliminating in our society. And a suicide death, 50% of the time, involves a gun. Yet, guns are only actually used in 5% of suicide attempts. They're extremely lethal. Can you see what I'm about to lead up to? And it's actually pretty simple. We want to dramatically reduce the suicide rate in this country. We lock up our guns. We want to dramatically reduce school shootings. It's actually equally simple. We don't allow young people to have access to guns. Now, did I say a single thing tonight that questioned any adult's right to own that gun? But with that right comes a responsibility to safeguard that gun from an angered, impulsive, substance abusing, depressed person that might reside in your very own home. Do you know what I sometimes hear? If I were to lock that gun up because I have it for safety, now my home would be more unsafe. Well, let's think about a time when having that loaded, unlocked gun makes your home unsafe because of someone who resides in your home. And then maybe we might progress down the road to, there's actually a safe out there that is as simple to unlock as my phone. All I did was touch it with one finger. Having responded to countless tragedies over the years that involved a young person and a gun, the adults must take charge. And Florida actually has what are called child access prevention laws. But unfortunately, our prosecutors usually do not want to press charges. If they do against the adult who owned the gun, it's usually a second-degree misdemeanor. We do need to take responsibility. And in our society, the bottom line is about 70% of the people who died by suicide actually went to see the family doctor shortly before they ended their life. Physicians have tremendous opportunities to actually intervene, but they have to be comfortable asking questions. I asked my daughter the other day, had her first child, because one of my students, and I have a couple of them here tonight, but one of them did her project on postpartum depression. So Jill just had her first child, and I said, you know, when you go in for a checkup on little Henry, do they focus on you, Jill? She said, well, Dad, the woman came in. She never really even said hi to me. She turned to a computer, never looked at me, and started asking questions. Did she think I was going to tell her anything about my mood state and whether I was managing being a young mom and working? So we need to have the climate of asking those questions be totally different. There is the rather sad data about Florida. And I'm only going to zero in on one figure there. 7.6% of high school students in our state, based on the best data we have from the Center for Disease Control, made a suicide attempt in the last 12 months. Who's the most likely to attempt tomorrow? That would be the kid with the previous history. So let's put this in the scope of, from my window, I can practically see Nova Public High School. Let's round it off to 2,000 kids. So what does this data actually say? 152 of them that just walked out of school on the last day made a suicide attempt within the last 12 months. You know what's really scary? Who's the most likely to make an attempt tomorrow? The kid with the previous history. But what's even scarier, most of the time the adults in their life have absolutely no idea. So who knows all about their suicide attempts? That would be their friends. The very kids that nobody talked to about what to look for, what to do, if you ever have a suicidal friend. And tonight, by the way, I've responded personally now to 16 different school shootings. I've been reading everything I possibly can about school shootings for nearly 40 years. So anything I say tonight is going to be based on all of that experience. But one thing that we always have to ask kids after the fact is, why didn't you tell an adult? You know what they often say? I didn't want to get involved. I feared retaliation. I didn't think it could happen. I've been conditioned not to tell. I'm sorry, but I don't have a go-to trusted adult at school. My favorite thing to ask any student in this country is this simple. Who's your go-to adult at school? And obviously I get the most concerned if they can't tell me a go-to adult. So those connections between students and school and staff are incredibly important and very, very preventative. The states that survey middle schoolers, which Florida did not, find a higher suicide rate for middle schoolers than for high school. I'm really sorry to tell you the suicide rate for middle school girls in this country doubled in the last decade. And if you ever saw the series 13 Reasons Why, it had many dangerous messages. And by the way, Common Sense Media, and that'll appear on a slide in just a moment, I'm a very big fan. So what did common sense media say about 13 reasons why? Nobody under the age of 16 should watch it ever. And if you're over 16 and have had problems with anxiety and bullying, you shouldn't watch it then. So moving on again, there are a couple of apps that young people need to be aware of to help them manage emotions. And notice one of them is called the Virtual Hope Box. And by the way, I think there are copies of these slides that you can certainly pick up at any time or on your way out tonight. And I'm sure also, Parkman, Todd, are we going to post these somewhere where people can find them? You certainly have permission to do that. So let me talk about bullying and suicide. And the bottom line is that bullying today is quite a challenge, especially cyberbullying. By the way, does anybody besides myself remember growing up in a home that actually had a phone with a cord on it? Does anybody remember that? Okay. Well, you know, for me, I swear to you, my mom sat next to that phone my entire adolescence. Was I ever on the phone in the middle of the night? Did I ever have a long, anguishing phone conversation with anybody? Not unless I wanted my mom to overhear. And by the way, when I walked in the house, my home was a safe haven. Nobody could reach me unless they wanted to talk to my mom first. So you're immediately aware all the ways the world has changed. And if you're wondering, what does the research actually say about suicide and bullying, let me be very straightforward. Strong association between suicide and bullying. Causation? No. Because we cannot rule out lots of other factors, like adverse childhood experiences, untreated or undertreated mental illness. And I'm always very concerned because LGBT students, as well as special education students, are often the victims of bullying. Now, a really positive thing about Broward County, I'm going to be honest and tell you, I think it's the most accepting place I have ever lived. But small town where I'm from in Kansas, you want to start a gay trade alliance? It's not going to happen. But one of the things we can be proud of is South Florida is not perfect, but it is a pretty accepting place. Okay, so here's the question I get from parents all the time. Well, how do I know my teen is really depressed? I mean, aren't they all moody, irritable? I think she's preparing me she's going away to Florida State next year. Well, Mom and Dad, let me ask you a couple of questions. Is this persistent? Has this gone on for 2 or 3 weeks or more? Yes, it has. Is it pervasive? Is it affecting home, school, and peers? Absolutely. Has she dropped out of what were previously pleasurable activities? As a matter of fact, she was on the dance team for years. All of a sudden, I couldn't believe it. She said she didn't care about dance anymore. Mom and Dad, you have a depressed teenager. 20% of all teens suffer from depression at some point during those tumultuous years. But the research says about 80% receive no treatment whatsoever. Now, having worked full-time in schools for 26 years, having presented to school psychologists, school counselors on every state in this country, what I'm about to say I stand by. School psychologists, they do not provide mental health services. They are consumed by special education. They are doing special education assessments. School counselors right here in this county have said to me, we're not a counselor at all. We're a clerk. We're a tester. We're a scheduler. And one of the good things that has come out of legislative discussions, it hasn't happened, I don't know that it ever will, but our legislature is aware of, to meet the required ratios from the various professional organizations, school counselors need to be doubled in our state, school psychologists quadrupled, and social workers increased tenfold. If we were to ever really believe that children should be the highest priority in our country, then we would certainly fund education better, and we would actually provide mental health services in our schools. But back to the parents, they should not hesitate to seek professional help. And I thought about, as it's baseball season, because I always wanted to be a Houston Astro, what was my batting percentage of actually convincing an adult to actually take their kid to get counseling outside of school? About 2 out of 10. So I would have batted about 200%. I'd have never made a single all-star team. That was despite my best efforts and most persuasive manner to get parents to actually follow through. And I sometimes hear something like this. My 14-year-old knew 2 of the victims well. I believe she needs counseling. She says she will not go. Mom and Dad, I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a decision that should be up to your 14-year-old. Here are 2 choices you could give her. Would you rather see a male counselor or a female counselor? Do you want me in the waiting room, or do you want me in some of the sessions? Those are choices for you. So, if somebody has recommended your child needs help, and I've always thought, what would I have done if any of our precious children experienced a school shooting or lost a close friend to suicide? It would have been in counseling. It would have been that simple. And that is my recommendation to this community. So those are warning signs of teenage depression, hopelessness. You know, for decades, we have had these warning signs of suicide, giving away prized possessions, making out a will, dramatic changes in behavior, talking and writing about suicide. And those are still appropriate for teens, but we've now added overwhelming stress. I think I could argue this is a very difficult time to be a teen in this country. And I just spoke in Indiana last week. And as I was checking in and I said what I was going to be speaking on, the lady behind the desk said, oh yes, we just had to do suicide. One of the things is he finally found out he was not going to Indiana University like everybody else in his family got to go to. Now, that certainly wasn't the only factor. But there's what are called precipitating events. Most commonly, a severe argument with a parent, a breakup of a relationship. And I'd like to illustrate something as I could. But imagine that Diane is a 14-year-old girl. She's devastated by the breakup of the first significant relationship in her life. I'm the well-meaning adult. Diane, I'm really sorry that this has happened. Today must seem really difficult. But you got to trust me about something, Diane. Every day things are going to get just a little bit better. And I'd really like to talk to you about what happened to me when I was 14. Yes, that was really difficult, Diane. I got through it. You will get through this. And by the way, I just turned 70, and I'm really happy. You're going to be okay. There's going to be somebody else. So, did I help her at all? What should I have done? Open-ended questions. I should have said things like, I can't imagine how difficult this is for you. I'm here to listen. Anytime you want to talk. Instead, was I dismissive? Did I give her a little pep talk? By the way, I might add, when I was 14, Doris Nelson broke up with me, and I am sure she is still sorry.
They touched me without permission.
Doris started dating a senior, and she married that SUV. John, I cannot even find her on Facebook. So I want to give one more example. This is about listening. And by the way, if there were magic words, and I knew them, I would tell them to you. Here's about as close as we can come. I'm here for you. Anytime you want to talk, I am here to listen. Going back to communities that have experienced staggering tragedies, you know what I sometimes hear? Even the people closest to me, they say that I should be over this by now. They're tired of hearing me talk about this. We should be there for them every step of the way. And one of the greatest problems in our society is that we glorify our school shooters. I'm a big fan of what's called no notoriety. And I imagine everybody here could tell me the name of the Parkland perpetrator. I will not be mentioning his name tonight. But can anybody tell me the name of the 17 who were killed and the 17 who were wounded? Maybe a few of you can. That's who the focus should always be on. Those that we lost and the survivors. Because the motivation of school shooters is actually pretty simple. Glory and or revenge. And unfortunately, our media gives them that glory. But going back to make a very simple point about listening. And you know your children the best. But I'm going to ask you to think about when is the shared time when your kid will truly talk to you. Our son loved basketball. By the way, he picked basketball, not me. So Jeremy knew any time, day or night, no matter how tired I might be, I would rebound for him. I get off the couch, I flip on the switch. I am not saying a word. I'm just catching the ball when it goes through the basket and a chest pass back. Jeremy's relaxed. He's shooting, something he really enjoys. And all of a sudden he starts talking to me, telling me all these things I want to know about because I'm his dad. I would respond with something really insightful based on my years of graduate study in psychology, when I would say, wow, I'm not sure. That's a hard one, son. What do you think? That's what they want from the adults in their life. They want to be listened to. And they obviously want to be taught some of the simple coping things that we all use, like deep breathing and mindfulness, positive imagery. We need to focus on all of those, but mostly we simply need to always be there to listen. And we need to remember, depression is treatable. And if the first medication does not work, at least go back and talk to the physician about other medications and other forms of treatment. So I'd be remiss tonight not to talk about protective factors. These actually come from the World Health Organization. I'm sorry to tell you we have around 1 million suicides a year around the world. The United States, I just looked this up because I'm speaking in Europe this summer. The United States ranked 27th. And some of the most protected countries against suicide are actually very nearby. All the Caribbean islands have very low suicide rates. But what protects young people? Having a good relationship with other young people. But I got a question for you. Who does a disturbed kid turn to for help? I'm afraid they often turn to another disturbed kid who doesn't know enough to get one of you involved. Now, we've already talked about access to lethal means. Religion is a wonderful protective factor, whether it's a church, whether it's a synagogue, or a mosque. And by the way, in our large schools, my greatest hope, every single kid walks into a school, sincerely believes somebody cared whether they showed up today or not. It's really easy for me to say, but do they really feel that way? Our daughter went to a massive high school, about the size of Stoneman Douglas. She would come home in the middle of the year and say, Dad, my English teacher had me confused with 2 other girls with brown hair and bracelets. Since I believe she's one of the most wonderful daughters who ever lived, you can see how frustrating that is that she doesn't feel like they know her, let alone her hopes and dreams. And I hope you sincerely believe your sons and daughters are the most wonderful children who ever lived. We've already talked about family cohesion and stability. A quick example with our son, Jeremy. He's 8 at the time. Son, I need to talk to you a little more about the death of your grandfather. He says, oh, I know what happened to him. He had a heart attack. I mean, I'm sorry I never met the man. Jeremy, there's a little more of the story. He did have a heart attack. And I want you to hear this next part from me, never from someone else. Your grandfather shot himself 2 weeks after his heart attack. The word is suicide. He looks at me and he said, "You lied to me." "No, son, I didn't really lie. I was waiting to give you more complete information." Then he thinks a little bit, and he looks up and says, "Dad, you shouldn't feel guilty." "Oh, why is that?" "Well, your parents, they weren't both psychologists like mine are. They couldn't have possibly taught you everything I know about the importance of feeling good about yourself. And everybody has problems. You just need to know, go get help." Now, wasn't that sweet that he was trying to alleviate your guilt? What's really the important point there? He's 8 years old. He believes he's a good person. Isn't that what you want for every single kid in Parkland? Just to believe I'm a good person. I'm loved and I matter. The rest of those are pretty self-explanatory, but I'd be remiss tonight not to talk about kids and cars. Bottom line, when Jill, our youngest, started driving, she never really had any accidents. But you know what I missed? I missed all the time I used to spend with her. Because I was fond of saying, "Jill, I don't care how far away your friend lives, let's go get her, let's bring her to our house." And by the way, I had that shared time in the car, and on the way back, after we picked up her friend, I was so quiet, and I learned so much. Don't be in a hurry to put your kid behind the wheel. 16-year-olds die 3 times more often in car accidents than 18-year-olds. Here's a phrase I hope you'll remember. Do not be intoxicated. You know what some kids told me? What's the big deal? I mean, I look up like every 5 or 10 seconds to see where I'm going. That phone in the car. The irony is you got it for safety. Probably the most dangerous thing we all do is get that phone out in the car. And I know the navigation feature is unbelievable, but it should be on auditory, not something that we are looking at instead of the roadway. So graduated driving laws. Florida's are pretty inadequate. Many states do this. When you're 16, for 6 months you cannot drive after dark. For 6 months you can't drive with anybody in your car under the age of 21. Florida's rather weak law says you can drive up until 11 o'clock at night, and you can have as many kids in the car as you can crowd in there. That could be very unfortunate. We lose thousands of teens in car accidents every single year. Technology. Some kids spend as many as 6.5 hours a day on their screens. Their screens are interfering with sleep. I used this example in Atlanta not long ago. What did I say to the parents? Especially on school nights. Tell your kids, it's 10 o'clock. Hand me all of your technology. You need to get a good night's sleep. I will have it all charged. I will hand it back to you first thing in the morning. So the mom stayed behind to talk to me. She said, "What if my 13-year-old daughter's friends could not reach her in the middle of the night?" Well, Mom, I guess if your daughter's friend is having such a serious incident, she should be talking to her own parent. And if you have your daughter's technology and you want to answer at 3 in the morning, well, I guess you could do that. You know, I did not convince her. She believed her daughter needed to be available 24/7. Some families, some schools are promoting what are called blackout times. Let's all turn the technology off. You know what I hear from a lot of moms? I'd like to have technology-free mealtime, but it's my husband. He will not put his phone down. So it's one of the things we could model. I don't know if you saw the release from Common Sense Media. It just came out today. It actually said our children are worried about the adults' technology usage. How many times have you seen an adult, even with a little kid, and you're just wishing, could they not put the phone down the other day, and we live on Ocean Drive, and that is a very busy road. So here's a mom standing next to a 5-year-old kid. They're not crossing a crosswalk, and the mom's on the phone. So I wanted to scream, what are you thinking? Go to the crosswalk, put your phone down. You didn't know that Florida leads the whole country in pedestrians killed, right? We absolutely do. So we need to pay attention to our young people and set an example for them of not letting the technology consume our lives. Sometimes they make this statement, do not let technology steal your child. And somebody usually says, they've already been stolen. Now, but if you have small children, you have a chance to have a little more control of this. And if you already got a teenager, they're used to a certain level of technology, you could at least sit around the kitchen table and talk about the family usage plan and the fact that we could argue our young people are more connected than ever before, but they're actually more isolated, more depressed. They're lacking a lot of face-to-face interpersonal skills, and they're not getting enough exercise. And the technology is a part of that. And by the way, Common Sense Media, I referenced them earlier, but you want to know whether a video game, a television program, a movie is appropriate for a specific age level, go to Common Sense Media, and they're going to tell you. And hopefully you will follow those recommendations. Major tips for parents: no screens in cars, no screens in bedroom. Being in the same room with them is a good start, but if you're actually not paying attention, you do not have the ability to basically access their technology, you're not policing enough. Don't be in a hurry for your kid to have a smartphone. After one of these talks, the mom let me know that her kid lost the $1,000 smartphone. Because I talked about, is there really something wrong with the old-fashioned flip phone? Could that be a reasonable place for a young kid to start? And one of the most exclusive private schools in Houston, the mom of an 8-year-old says, I'm thinking about getting her a smartphone, but I'm not sure I really want her to have internet access 24 hours a day. Well, Mom, let me think about that for a moment. When did I get internet access 24 hours a day? I believe I was 58 years old. Your daughter's how old? She's 8. Why does she need it? Well, all of her friends have it. Well, what's the day like at this exclusive private school? Well, I drop her off in the morning. They open the door. They escort her into the building. They put her back in my car after school. Well, why does she need a phone at all? She's supervised totally from the moment you drop her off at school. So the message really is take charge. I spoke to 6th graders' parents not long ago, and I almost wanted to have them stand up and repeat after me, my happiness does not depend on whether or not my 11-year-old likes me right now. I am the parent. Technology is a privilege, it is not a right. I didn't go that far, but the middle school principal called me. She said, Scott, the parents love what you had to say. They would like you to come back to the school. Well, why would I come back? They want you to tell their children why they're going to change something. So it's a little bit like they miss the entire essence of my message. Lots of children have experienced trauma and loss, especially here in the Parkland community. Typical reactions: nightmares and sleeping problems. They fear the future. They regress academically and behaviorally. Those are not the unusual reactions. Those are the almost every single time reactions. We want all parents to model optimism, hope, and coping. And when parents are having a lot of trouble with something, they need to get help for themselves, or they need to talk to other adults, as opposed to projecting all their thoughts and worries onto their children. Permission for a range of emotions. There's no right or wrong way to feel about something. Opportunities, if you wish to talk about it, write about it, artwork, music, projects, ceremonies, rituals. And perhaps one of the greatest things is that adolescents in particular, after a tragedy, they want to do something to make a difference. And we have countless examples of this right in our community. Because let's be really honest. If 1 million moms marching in the year 2000 couldn't change things, it's going to be difficult for a small group of very dedicated teenagers. In all honesty, I'm worried about stress, some of the disappointment they might experience. And I might say things to them like, it would be okay to just go away to college like you planned. It would be okay to just play soccer and be a normal senior in high school. But then there is a great quote from Margaret Mead. She talks about changing the world. And she says, a few people, that's all it's taken. And maybe they're the only people that have ever changed the world. So I applaud every teenager who wants to make a difference, because they don't let others to actually ever have to go through this. And you see the body point up there. I argued, and I always argue, get kids back to school as quickly as possible. Help the adults first. I always use the analogy, if you're traveling with a small child on an airplane, and there's a problem with the oxygen level in the cabin, whose mouth does the mask go over first? The adults. And get the adults help and get kids back to school as quickly as possible so they are back and all together. So, big believer also in restricting television coverage of tragic events. And when someone is glued to the television with the horrific coverage, they should turn it off, call a friend, walk the dog, plant flowers, do something that helps them alleviate stress, something that's optimistic and positive. Now this next part, I could spend the next 20 minutes on, but I'm going to make it very quick. There are 4 cabinets in everybody's home that the adult must take charge of. The gun cabinet we've already discussed. We also talked about the internet. The 3rd cabinet would be the liquor cabinet. So what did I say to all 4 of our children? The law says 21. I will never look the other way. I will certainly never provide it, and I will never condone it. And you all need to know something. In my humble opinion, all 4 of your grandparents were alcoholics. I don't think the Poland family is the only one that has a problem with alcoholism. So what was I really saying to them? When you're 21, I understand legally you'll be able to drink. But I hope you won't even drink then. Because alcoholism is a tremendous problem in our country. So you're wondering, what's the 4th cabinet? That would be the medicine cabinet, where we have all of those opioids, unfortunately. Now, my wife and I survived totaling my Harley in Utah. We suffered multiple broken bones, but they prescribed to us so many opioids. We refused to take them. They're all locked in our safe. So, if you haven't disposed of all those medications, lock them up. All right. Bring back the family meal. McDonald's says they have the full value meal, but where is it really? It's at your kitchen table with free and easy discussion between kids and parents. And I know it's harder in our busy lives, especially when there's been a divorce, but I was always saying to our youngest, Phil, Wednesday, that's when you're sitting around our kitchen table. But whatever's going on, you got to figure out, because Wednesday night is dinner at our house. I often find there's a very big gap between what's actually going on in a teenager's life and what their parents believe is happening. And when we set up their room to be a little kingdom, why are they coming out? My television, my music, my internet access, my phone, of course. Why am I coming out? Ellen made dinner, but watch me try to pick up that plate of food and take it back to my room and eat it in isolation. Keep all that technology out in the family room. And if you're the parent of a 12-year-old girl, you're about to buy her a laptop with a camera, what do you think I'm going to say to you? Don't do it. Too many 12-year-old girls have given in to the pressure and have engaged in sexting. So take control of that technology. Separating the deed from the doer is critically important. Bottom line is every kid makes mistakes, and they need consequences. Most recently, Donna was the principal at U School. Very affluent school, lots of powerful parents. So let me just quote her. Scott, it's like every parent either is an attorney or they're bringing their attorney. All she was trying to do was have their kid experience a consequence. We learn from those consequences. We learn to make different choices. But our love for them and their worth as a person never should be in question. Now, a simple restitution example. Jeremy didn't like timeout. He was 4. He was sent to timeout. He throws open the door to his room. I see the doorknob go through the wall. Am I angry? Do I want to grab him, yell at him, shake him? Of course I do, but I don't. I go to the other end of the house. When I go back, I'm actually very calm. I have a simple question. Jeremy, how will you fix the hole you put in the wall? He looks at me. He doesn't know. He starts crying. Jeremy, get your piggy bank. We're going to Ace Hardware right now. You're buying the materials to fix the hole in the wall, and you will help me repair it. If I were to back into one of your cars in the parking lot tonight, should you get out and scream at me about my ability to operate a motor vehicle? I hope not. I hope you'll simply ask me for all of my insurance information. Not long ago, a kid walked out of the principal's office, slammed the door with all of his might, cracked the door frame, $237. So now we're having the conference. We simply ask, how will you pay for the door? He doesn't have any money. His parents say they don't have any money. Okay, we anticipated that. You'll be staying after school and helping the custodian for X number of days and writing a late lesson. Well, let's call him John. John doesn't show up to help the custodian a single day after school. And about 2 weeks later, we got a check in the mail. They turned it in on their homeowner's policy. Is that what we wanted? Hold kids accountable. You break it, you do what you can to fix it. You hurt somebody's feelings, you apologize. Restitution, a lesson that should be learned very early on. I already talked about go-to trusted adults, and now I'm going to weigh in on academic expectations. Where do these high expectations come from? I asked some kids at Woodson High School in Fairfax County, Virginia, and why was I there? The school had 5 suicides in one semester. So I said, where's all this academic pressure coming from? Oh, we put it on ourselves. We're always asking each other, what is your classroom? Or it often comes from parents. You know what I like to share with any teenager who will listen? I actually got kicked out of the University of Kansas the first time for poor scholarship. All I can tell you is I would have been a very bad accountant. After I got drafted and served in the military, when I went back, I had a little different attitude. I got 3 degrees. I wrote 5 books. I spoke before Congress 4 times. Maybe I turned out okay. You can stumble. You can start at a community college. You can take a year and work, and you can still have a pretty happy life. So what am I actually saying to the adults? Think about, could you ease some of that pressure? I know when Donna was the youth school, high school principal, she said things like this: history department, your night for homework is Tuesday. English, yours is Thursday. That is the night that you will give the homework. And I might argue, what's one of the most unfair things we do to a kid? We give them homework. Some kids go home literally to milk and cookies. Mom or dad is there, and they actually understand algebra. And there's good lighting and a great workspace. Other kids, they go home to chaos. Because Aunt Edna moved in with 3 little cousins that high school kid now has to take care of. So, you've heard my view. If somebody ever tells you your kid has a problem and needs help, do not be defensive. You know what I sincerely believe about people who work in education? They didn't get in it to get rich. You do know that the data says living in Broward County is about the poorest place in this country to be a teacher because of the cost of living. Would I raise their pay tomorrow? Absolutely, I would. Why did they get an education? They care about children. And if somebody is saying, I have a concern, don't get mad. Don't think they're blaming you. Get help. Support the school and work with them. So I already talked about the summer, potentially, unfortunately, is a very dangerous time. What am I encouraging you to do? Absolutely to demand to know what's going on. And hopefully they're involved in some structured activities. Basically what I think for every teen, they need a purpose. They need a reason to get out of bed today. They need something they're going to be doing. And frankly, I hope they're going to at least a part-time job. But if they don't have a part-time job, then I'm going to argue they need to be volunteering. They need to be helping younger kids. They need to have some kind of purpose, at least for a few hours, several days a week. Now I'm not opposed to having some days that are just going to be totally fun days, but 3 months, you know what the literature actually says? Our country is foolish to give the kids 3 months off in the summer. Because frankly, most parents go to work. But I had 8 weeks off every summer. Even though I had a chance to work longer and make more money, I refused. I got this nice card from my 40-year-old son just the other day. It says, Dad, thank you for all those national parks. And although we didn't make it to every Major League Baseball park, we made it to 19 of them because we had the time to do that. But unfortunately, most American jobs, we work too many weeks of the year. Compares with Europe, 2-3 times the number of vacation days. So a lot of kids, frankly, have little supervision, and they're actually bored over the summer. And especially kids from an impoverished background, they're actually really glad for school to start because they got lunch every day at school. They may not get that if they live in one of our poor families. So a balance of fun and relaxation. I hope they're going off to a camp. Although one year Jill got angry with me. She said, Dad, I want to go to Camp Ozark for 4 weeks. Jill, you're only going for 2 weeks because the bottom line is I want to spend time with you this summer. I don't want you shipped off to camp for 4 weeks. And by the way, she got older, she became a camp counselor, which is a very important way for kids to get involved and find meaning in their lives. Okay, so resiliency. Obviously the biggest word in all of psychology and recovery. There are the keys behind me. Are you surrounded by loving and caring family and friends? Are you comfortable venting and sharing strong emotions? Are you optimistic about the future? Those are the keys to being able to bounce back from adversity. Now I have a quick question for you. Can everybody visualize right now the person in your life who gives you the benefit of their negativity every time you see them. Can you think of that person? Well, here's the tip for tonight. Stay away from that person. Seek out the people in your life that are positive and that are encouraging. So what is the real point here? Parents need to model being optimistic about the future. At the same time, they are always there to listen to their child. And be careful not to ask too many questions. You ask too many questions, and all of a sudden, that conversation is over. Carnegie Foundation weighed in on what do children in the United States need for success. They need significant adults in their lives besides their parents. She's singing at the church this Sunday. He has a spring soccer game. Who's going to show up? Is the aunt going to drive down from Port St. Lucie? Is the retired guy across the street going to show up? Who is basically going to demonstrate, I care about you? Now, many people have just gone to say one. 3 significant adults in a kid's life besides their parents, that's a lot. So let's try just one. And 45 years ago, I was a graduate student in Indiana. I signed up to be a big brother for Rodney. Rodney was 13. Rodney never knew his dad. His mom was confined to a wheelchair. She was on welfare. Rodney and I were matched, officially for 5 years. Rodney and I have had a very rewarding relationship for 45 years. I just saw him a week ago. And even though I moved away from Indiana a long time ago, every 3 or 4 years to make sure that I traveled there to see him, we text, we talk on the phone, we follow each other on Facebook. And just last weekend he said, 4 different times he said, I miss you, man. Rodney never had anybody. And there are a lot of kids out there that don't have anybody. There is a waiting list of 4 years in virtually every city in America to get a big brother. There's a waiting list of about 4 months to get a big sister. And when our youngest graduated from law school, first thing Jill did, signed up to be a big sister to Anna, an 11-year-old girl in Houston. You need to model getting involved in people's lives. You also see volunteer work. Though, if I could change it, I would quadruple the community service hours. Lots of kids leave that to like the last semester of high school. It shouldn't be 50 hours. It should be very easily several hundred hours. Especially kids that don't have a job, they have plenty of time to volunteer. And you know what I think you learn when you volunteer? Guess what? The world does not revolve around you. And that little upset you had with your 14-year-old friend, you can put that in perspective when you actually see how some people in this world are actually hurting. So I encourage you to get your children involved at an early age with volunteer work. And organized activities, there's 2 ends of the spectrum here. High socioeconomic schools, my experience has been the kids have too many organized activities because their school team conflicts with their travel club team. Their school play conflicts with the community play. So what do I say to those parents? How about if you ask your kid 1 activity a season? We will make that happen. But don't you want your kid's life to revolve around your family and not have it revolve around countless outside activities? Now, at the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to give you an example from Millsap Elementary School, where I personally worked for 24 years. Lee was on my regular counseling list. By the way, one day he came in, his shoes were the kind that lit up, and he had a new watch. And I said, Lee, I tried to see you on Friday. And he's like, yeah, I was suspended on Friday. Well, Lee, did you just get new shoes and a new watch? Yeah, I did, over the weekend. I'm a little surprised. Like, your kid's suspended from school on a Friday, then I don't really think they need to have things purchased for them over the weekend. And I didn't shower our kids with monetary things because I felt guilty because I was out of town yet one more time. It was always, how are they doing with the work of being a kid? You know what I think the work of being a kid is, no matter what the age? It's only two things: reasonable behavior and success at school. And the second part, getting along reasonably well with everybody in their life. That would be siblings, parents, neighbors, the other kids at school. So that was an example of Lee who was rewarded at an inopportune time. But I want to give you the example of Billy. So Billy was also on my case list, and Billy says, Dr. Poland, you know what I want to do more than anything? I just want to play Little League Baseball. Hey, Billy, well, I saw the forms. They're in the office. I'm going to get you signed up. Oh, you don't understand. It's just my mom. She works after school. I can never go to a practice. She doesn't have $70. Now, unfortunately, that is the situation for a number of kids. They can't participate in anything because of finances and transportation. And I just happened to mention this in class today, but I signed up to coach soccer when Jeremy was 5. Did I know anything about it? No, I did not. What was my entire goal? Make it fun, so kids want to keep playing. Okay? So that first year, I left a couple of messages for Bobby Bryan, because he's on my roster. He's not showing up for practice. So I finally got his mom on the phone. Claire, I missed Bobby at the first 2 practices. Take his name off your list. My husband left us last week. He's moved back to Chicago. I work. Bobby could never get to a practice. Well, Claire, where is he after school? Well, he's in a daycare. Well, Claire, you'd have to give me written permission. But if you do, I will pick him up and I will take him to practice and I will make sure you are at home before I return him to your house. You know, I actually drove Bobby Bryan to practice. Well, the last year, we were still playing. He was 16. He actually had his own car. But I drove him every practice for all those years. Step forward, get involved in kids' lives. So, a couple of final thoughts. I think we always have to be reminded, yes, we are the parents. And you have every right to be involved in your kid's life. And make sure that you start that at a very early age and you stay very much involved. And I know that's actually what your children want. They may protest when they're teenagers, but what they want you to demonstrate is how much you care about them. And I truly hope you will go home and tell your children, yes, you are the son or the daughter I always wanted. In one of these presentations in Colorado, I hadn't even got out the building when a mom's coming up to me and she said, I just got a text for my son, he's away in college. And he says, thank you, Mom, and you need to know you are the mother I always wanted. We need to have that kind of communication in our families. There's how to contact me. There's the website for the Suicide and Violence Prevention Office that I co-direct. And again, our university wants to help Broward County in any way possible, and we have a lot of resources. But I want to see what questions you might have for me. And please shout them out.
I have a question.
Yes.
My daughter's in therapy. She was in the trauma and development. She goes to weekly therapy. Is there any other
very glad to know that your daughter is in therapy, and I think it's important that you follow through. I always want to ask things about social life, school, involvement, sleep. Perhaps the one thing I didn't spend enough time on is that sleep deprivation is connected to depression and suicide. So, has she resumed a lot of normal activities? Is she in the mind and body club after school? A wealth of information and approaches. I hope that the therapist at least gives you some information about how the therapist believes your daughter is doing. And then I'd be looking at eating, sleeping, peers, academics. How is all of that working out?
Well, she still has sleep terrors, she calls them. Her eating is weird, but she has jobs, many jobs. She started a new school. She's on a roll, which she wasn't before.
Okay.
So academically, she's doing great. She's very focused, but still that level of anxiety and that normal that was before is, she's just a totally different person.
Well, it sounds like she's coping as well as we might expect somebody to, and hopefully there'll be long-term support. And there's actually what's called the 60-20-20 rule. You ever heard of this? Well, I learned it from some psychologists in Israel. 60% of us, no matter how staggering the traumatic event, we're going to be okay. We turn to our family, our faith, our friends. And by the way, the one question that I believe we should ask someone who's experienced a traumatic event, remember I said we should primarily be listening. And by the way, as a psychologist, you know the two words that I virtually never said? I understand. Could I really understand? Unless something very similar had happened to me or I had been right there. So primarily a listening mode. But we should always be asking people, who or what has helped you when you've dealt with something sad in your life before? And we're hopefully reminding them of the support systems that have been in place. So 60% of us are going to be okay. 20% we would expect minor problems. Unfortunately, we would predict 20% to have major problems. The literature talks about traumatized adolescents, now more at risk for substance abuse, reckless behavior, and unfortunately, depression. And that's why we should be applauding you for getting help for your daughter. Anybody else have a question or something they would like to comment on? Yes, John.
Yes. So those numbers are pretty scary considering MSP, that means there's 600 very potentially ill kids walking around now. I see a lot of parents in our community that they just don't want to, they want to move on and not deal with this anymore. It just gets old. It's like, okay, it's happened, whatever, move on. And I think that, there's a lot of kids that are struggling. My kids are very resilient. We have a very nurturing, loving home. And my kids are very strong. But it took my son almost a year before he said, I want to get help, after us asking. But I think there's a lot of kids that are struggling, and the parents just don't want to, this happened over a year ago, it's done, let's move on, and everything will be all right. That's a concern that I see in this community. And I don't think it's parents trying to be bad parents. I just think they think they're being good parents by saying, let's just maybe we forget about it. But there's a lot of kids struggling and still not getting the help that they need. And they're afraid to confront their parents.
Well, John, I think that was very well said. And I've often found parents to be rather high in denial, because if you recognize the problem, then you have to do something about it. Or as a parent, you may not be sleeping quite as well at night. But I've really tried to stress tonight listening, and this community should recognize the community is in this for the long haul. things do get better, but it takes a very long time. And sometimes we have to acknowledge that the path of the community has changed, at least for a considerable period of time. And the more that the entire community can always be there to listen, and the more that we can try to all work together to make a difference and hopefully ensure that something like this never happens again. We do know that there's often an anniversary effect to suicide, meaning there might be an attempt on the birthday that the loved one would have had, or on the anniversary of a tragedy. And screening, or depression screening, it's called, is very important, not only in our schools, but in our doctor's offices. I talked earlier about the importance of physicians being very involved and very in tune, because probably the vast majority of kids in Parkland saw the family physician about something within the last year, and screening for depression and looking for signs that there might be hopelessness and lack of joy of life. That should be taking place in every pediatrician's office, and then helping to guide the parents and the young person towards community resources. Yes, John?
Just one more thing. Are pediatricians allowed to ask the kids if they have guns in the home?
Okay.
Because I will say, for my son, one of the first questions they asked when me and my wife were with my son initially was, are there any guns? But I don't see the doctors doing that at annual checkups.
Okay. Florida actually passed what was called the Doctors versus Glocks rule in 2011, forbidding psychologists, mental health professionals, and physicians from asking anyone about gun ownership. Now, can you immediately think of some times that that would seem to be a very wise thing to ask about? Like you've got a depressed kid, maybe you have an extremely overactive kid who's, on top of the refrigerator, for example. So, obviously, the medical and psychology groups protested, and that law was thrown out in 2017. And I believe strongly that there are countless circumstances where gun ownership needs to be asked about. I would like to think it would be asked about routinely, and someone should not feel on the spot. It's simply an opportunity to talk about responsibility. One more example. So do you remember like the first time your precious child ever rode in a car where you weren't driving it? You're going to let them ride with, their friends' moms taking them somewhere. So I'm pretty sure you may absolutely be certain that that car seat was in properly, it was belted in, etc. Yet, have you ever asked the family where your kid's about to go play? Do you own guns? Are your guns properly stored? Because that's a question you should add to your repertoire. So, unfortunately, and I just read this week, 8 kids every day die because guns are improperly stored. 8 kids in our country every single day. So, gun storage would do a lot to prevent primary reasons we're here tonight, which is to talk about preventing school shootings as well as preventing youth suicide. Lock up the guns. But I'll be honest, I've had people get angry at me. You're right to own a gun. I'm stressing the responsibility. Any other questions? And I really have appreciated the opportunity to talk with you. Yes?
One last question. How would you approach if your child mentioned that their classmate was going through something, like they were depressed? Do you reach out to the teacher, the parents? Like, how do you get involved in that?
That is a great question. What do we do when one of our children is concerned about a classmate? Now, best scenario is that you might actually have a connection to your child's friend's parent. That is quite a challenge where we live. And I'll be honest, I think South Florida is a pretty unfriendly place. I actually lived in a gated community for 9 years. How many neighbors do you think invited me into their home?
None.
That would be one, and he was trying to sell me Monavie. So we need to increase our connections in our schools, our neighborhoods, and in our families. But I might turn it back to your child, like, what do you think would help? What are your ideas? Who do you think we should talk to about this? And I really hope that the parent would be informed. And one last thing. One of my friends has a high school student, and he said, Carl came to him about a message he just received about his ex-girlfriend, not sure she wanted to live anymore. And my friend Rick said, I turned to Carl and I said, Carl, get your coat. Carl said, why do I need my coat? We live in Kansas and it's cold outside. We're going over to her house. So whatever we need to do to make sure that parents of the child in question know, would it be possible that that kid might be a little angry at your son for a while, but at some level, your kid took action because they care. They came to you for guidance, and make sure the family is aware and hopefully appropriate services are provided. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come. And I'll stay behind for